our next speaker and our very valued partner at Google, I don't think my intro is going to do her any justice, but Natalie leads the Think with Google team at Google. And to those that are unfamiliar with the platform, it delivers and provides data and insights to millions of advertisers throughout the world. Natalie has spent over 15 years as a journalist working with many major brands and has appeared on many news channels like ABC World News, CNN, NPR, and many others. So she's somewhat of a celebrity here. So I'm happy I get to introduce her. So with that, I do want to introduce Natalie Zmuda to take us through some insights into what she has been seeing on the Think with Google side. So take it away, Natalie.
Thank you so much for the kind intro. I am so excited to be here. As Marvick said, my name is Natalie Zmuda, and I am the head of Think with Google, which is, let's get that there, which is Google's content and thought leadership platform for marketers and anyone who cares about marketing. So I'm here to talk to you a little bit today about how we're going to look backward to move forward, because in early 2020, as we all know, the world changed. And with it, people changed, and we all started doing things differently. We started shopping differently. We stayed in touch with friends and family differently. Work, school, exercise, entertainment, all of it we've had to rethink and reorder in the last 18 months. And some of those trends have been fleeting. Think about when everyone was trying to find toilet paper, or when all of the parents out there, we were all searching for homeschool schedules and trying to figure out how to educate our kids, how to be teachers. Last summer, everyone was buying blow-up pools and spent a lot of time gardening. I know I learned how to can tomatoes for the first time with all of the tomatoes we had in our garden. And this summer, we're seeing a lot of searches around travel. We're seeing a lot of personal care searches. People are coming out of hibernation. But there are other trends that we think indicate a bigger, potentially more permanent shift in the way that people behave and in what they expect of brands. And that's what I'm here to talk to you about today. So we're going to look back to move forward, and we'll explore which trends are here to stay. I've got a lot of data to share with you, and I hope it's useful as you're all thinking about what's next for your business, as you're all starting to think about 2022 planning. And I'll leave time for Q&A like Jerry, so please jot down any questions that come to mind. All right, here we go. So people are constantly evolving, and they constantly have new needs. Every day, 15% of the search queries that we see on Google are ones we've never seen before. And that was before the pandemic. So let that sink in for a minute. It's crazy, right? So what's a brand to do? What are we as marketers to do if we want to attract and retain customers? We've got to evolve, plain and simple. We've got to read the tea leaves, which for us at Think with Google is search queries. And we need to make educated guesses about what's likely to stick. And that, I think, is more critical today than at perhaps any other moment in modern history. Why, you ask? Why is it so important right now? We get it. COVID was life-changing. It was huge. It's been huge. It was, it is. And when you pair that with the technology that we have at our disposal, this is what you get. 4 in 5 consumers say they discovered new brands online during COVID-19. So if we were all in a room together, I'd ask you to all raise your hands to tell me if you discovered a new brand in the last 18 months. I'm guessing a lot of hands would go up. I know mine would. Chances are you discovered multiple new brands. And that makes it even more crucial that we're all paying attention to these new consumer behaviors and how people are changing, what they're doing differently. Because everyone listening today, you're probably all in a position that you're either going to lose customers or you're going to gain them as a result of COVID. So in the next 25, 30 minutes or so, I'm going to talk through 5 trends, all backed by Google data, all based on search queries that we're seeing. And I hope that that will help to illustrate some of the consumer shifts that we think are here to stay. I'm going to dig into why individuality matters more than ever. We'll explore searches that show how people are embracing a higher purpose. I'm really excited to talk about home as headquarters, because even before the pandemic, we saw this happening, which makes this not just a trend, but a trend on steroids. And we'll dig into how people are really bringing their whole selves to your brand. And their expectations are that brands are going to to really acknowledge that, to really understand that people aren't going to be treated just as a demographic, but that they're going to be treated as their unique selves. And finally, future-proofing. It is top of mind for all of us as marketers, and it's also really top of mind for consumers. They're thinking about how to future-proof their own lives as we kind of come out of this really, really uncertain period in time. All right, so first trend, first step, individual matters. In the last 18 months, COVID-19 has been this globally shared problem. Around the world, any country in the world, small town, big city, rural, urban, we lived with the ramifications of COVID-19. Yet, even though this was this hugely global experience, it also exposed this really simple truth, which is that there's no universal human experience. So people are placing more value on individual needs, on individual perspectives, even when they're outside of the norm, even when they're different. Let me share some examples. Let me share some data. So these are some of the types of searches that we're seeing. In India, there has been a 250% increase in searches related to disability etiquette, as people are trying to understand, how does this work? How is this experience different from my own? And how can I be a part of this? At the same time, search interest for racial justice has peaked worldwide, not just in the US, worldwide, as did a whole host of related searches. The world is really grappling with and trying to better educate themselves about racial related injustices. Searches for inclusion up 100%. This desire to be inclusive, this desire to be included, it's not going to go away. And I think today, more so than ever before, people have this greater appreciation for experiences that are different from their own, for people that are different from themselves. There's another aspect of this trend toward understanding individuality. People really today expect experiences that are personalized for them, that are efficient for them, and that are convenient for them. And this has been popping up in search. We've been seeing this. People are getting super, super specific about what's relevant to them and about what they need. So for years, we saw people searching near me. That has been a big trend over the last number of years. People looking for, grocery stores near me, best ice cream near me, movies near me, you name it. But today that's getting a little bit more granular. So people want to know along my route. What's along my route? What is specific to me that I can find on my way to wherever I'm going? Searches for along my route have been growing really quickly, up 1,000%. So search has always been personal, but it's becoming even more personal, even more specific. And when people expect that of search, what they're really saying is they expect that of the brands that they find on search. So let's talk a little bit about what this means for brands. Simply acknowledging diversity, equity, inclusion, it's not going to be enough. Brands need to have empathy, but also solutions for all of the situations that their consumers are facing. Brands also need to really build inclusivity in from the beginning, because treating it as an add-on, it's not going to cut it. Unilever is a great example of this. Unilever announced earlier this year that it would drop the word normal from its beauty products after they did this global poll that showed that people feel like that word, when it's used to describe hair or skincare, it makes people feel excluded. So globally, more than 100 of Unilever's brands are going to have the word normal removed from their packaging and removed from their marketing materials. And the company says that this is really an important step toward creating a more inclusive definition of beauty. And building on that along my route insight we talked about, it's time for brands to really start thinking about individual journeys. So how does your customer, your specific individual customer, go from inspiration to consideration to purchase on any given day for any given product? In the case of IKEA, they took this really literally, which I think is very cool. So IKEA acknowledged its superstores are often built on the outskirts of cities. They often take a while to get to them. It's a bit of a commitment. You got to kind of make a day of it, right? That's why they have those cafeterias with the great Swedish meatballs. So last year it offered this distance-based discount. It's buy with your time promotion. And that allowed people to actually buy items with their time. So there were tags on items all across the store that showed the price in money as well as the price in time. And when you got to checkout, you would show the cashier your Google Maps timeline, where you'd been going, and they would give you the discount. And so I think that sort of thinking is what we're going to need more of as we start to think about individuals. And I've got a quick video to show you from IKEA.
IKEA's giant superstores are usually built on the outskirts of cities. As a result, families spend a lot of time driving to the stores. Could IKEA give them a stronger incentive to make the trip? IKEA's Buy With Your Time promotion was conceived as a way to reward people for travelling to IKEA. They could use the time they spent on the road to actually buy things in our stores. Everything in the store had a tag that showed the price in money as well as time. During checkout, shoppers just had to show the cashier their Google Maps timeline, which would have a record of all their past trips. Converting that time into an amount in UAE dirhams was a simple calculation based on the average family income in the country.
Hi sir, good morning. Would you like to pay by cash, card or by your time?
Cash or time?
Would you like to pay with time as well?
At the moment I can see that you have 2 hours 35 minutes.
Can I pay for these small items with my time?
For this one item, sir, that's a total of 45 minutes. And for these 3 items, it's a total of 1,800 dirhams, sir.
That on time, this on card.
As expected, this novel promotion was an instant hit.
Have I got anything left over for a hot dog, maybe?
After all, this was the first time that anyone had changed time literally into money, or for that matter, into a shelving unit, a coffee table, or a potted plant.
All right. So hopefully that starts to get you guys thinking a little bit about how might you create more individual experiences. Now, trend number 2, higher purpose. In the last 2 years, we have had global crises from, COVID-19, of course, wildfires in Brazil, Australia, the US, and it's brought people's values to the forefront. It's really pushed people to look for ways to do more for their communities, to do more for their environment. And if people are doing that, and if people are thinking that way, you got to believe that they expect the same of the brands that they're loyal to. Let me share some examples, paint the picture a little bit. So in the UK, growth in searches related to carbon neutrality, up 92%. Growth in searches for ethical online shopping, up 600%. We're seeing that what people value, the things that they determine are important to their purchasing decisions, that's really converging with their values, their very views on the world. And one of the things people value now more than ever is helpfulness. Searches for can I help, up 70%. And searches for support local businesses went absolutely through the roof, up more than 20,000%. Now, some of this emphasis on local businesses I expect will die down as local economies start to recover. But remember that the new brands that were discovered during this period, the new habits that people formed, those are going to stick. Another interesting point. According to Edelman's Trust Barometer, businesses are now the most trusted institution in the world. That's something that gained steam in part as a result of COVID, because people realized that governments were just not equipped to develop and distribute COVID vaccines without the support of private institutions. Businesses stepped up in a really big way in the last 18 months. There are tons of examples from throughout the pandemic of businesses stepping up to help people. And people are going to expect that businesses are going to continue to focus on big social, political, and environmental issues going forward. So what does all this mean? It is increasingly important to support communities and to take action to integrate sustainability and your values into your business. Converse did this, I thought, really brilliantly. They invited artists to create these air purifying murals to really bring communities together. And the murals, which are now, they exist around the world, and they use air purifying paint to eliminate CO2 and other harmful substances. So actually, as the paint dries, it becomes like a tree. Any surface coated with this paint becomes an active air purifying surface, which is very cool. And in a world where people are shopping their values, businesses also need to be thinking about how to make their values, how to make their internal practices a bit more visible. There are lots of businesses I've worked with over the years that are doing very cool things that they never talk about. Now's the time. Shiseido, for instance, is starting to give people behind the scenes glimpse of its R&D process. They have this new global innovation center that they're fashioning as an open lab, with the goal of becoming a leading research institution that customers can easily drop in on, they can explore what's in the works, or they can drop in and refill their favorite products. I've got a video on that too.
2020, our sustainability action starts from Ginza. The Shiseido ULTIMUNE fountain. Inspired by the Japanese Mottai-nai spirit, which values all things with deep appreciation, it's an entirely new refill service. Please bring your emptied ULTIMUNE bottle to our global flagship store. Your bottle will be thoroughly cleaned with the utmost care. Refilled with ULTIMUNE and carefully checked before being returned to you. ULTIMUNE strives to replenish your skin and spirit and drives environmentally friendly efforts. The Shiseido ULTIMUNE fountain. From Ginza to the world. Sustainable beauty actions. Shiseido, Ginza, Tokyo.
All right. Trend number 3, home as headquarters. This one I find to be fascinating. And I'll share a little behind the scenes story from Think with Google. So take yourself back to December of 2019, our internal research and insights team, they approached us, they came and chatted with me, and they said, we're seeing this really interesting trend. More people are working from home, and more people are saying that they want to work from home. They want flexible schedules. And we've got this data point. There are a ton of people starting to use grocery delivery services. Grocery delivery services have been around for a while, and they've kind of been, knocking along, but it's really starting to explode. Do you think that's interesting? And I greenlit the story. I said, let's do this. The working headline was something like, there's no place like home. And then right as we started wrapping up the story, probably February 2020 or so, the world shut down. Everyone went home. And so we ended up pivoting the story to reflect all of the new data that was coming in. Home truly became people's headquarters. Whether it was pre-pandemic or post-pandemic, the insights are the same. People are busy and they're looking to make better use of their time and to have a better quality of life. So here's the data. Pre-pandemic, grocery delivery searches were already surging, as were searches for remote jobs. So grocery delivery searches up 130%. Searches for remote jobs jumping 210%. Neither of those things is going to go away. And if you've discovered grocery delivery service during the pandemic, or you've worked from home for the first time, you're probably going to continue to want some aspect of that, at least some of the time, because it makes your life easier. It makes your life better. Also during the pandemic, we saw this huge surge in searches for at home. No big surprise there. Ballooned, up 10x. Same with watch time on YouTube for videos that were focused on specifically on home activities, up 120%. Some of this is going to fade away with the pandemic as life gets back to normal, but there are going to be lasting changes. The in-office work model, all indications are that it has likely changed forever. And that means new patterns for people. More meals consumed at home, a greater need for home offices, different patterns around e-commerce. People have gotten really comfortable with online browsing and shopping. Groceries is just one example of that. So I'm personally really, really interested to see what this is going to shape up like. What are things going to look like this holiday season? I was reading a piece from our Spanish LATAM team, and they were talking about how half of the people who are going to be shopping this holiday season are new e-shoppers that were born during the pandemic. I'm super excited, super interested to see what happens with all of those new e-shoppers this holiday season. So what does all of this mean? Bottom line, people want a better quality of life. Who wouldn't? I do. And they're not going to be keen to give up the services that helped them with that. And you've heard this a million times. I know. Invest in an omnichannel strategy. And if you need more proof as to why, just look at Target. It says omnichannel customers spend 4x more than store-only buyers and 10x more than digital-only shoppers on average. We're also seeing, businesses across the board have had to rethink the way they do business in the pandemic, and they're rethinking what are maybe some traditional or perceived business boundaries because they're trying to make services more convenient for people who are at home. And Hyundai, their luxury car brand Genesis, has really embraced this. They've got personal shoppers, they're bringing test drives and other showroom services directly to people's homes, for example. And I've got a quick clip of that.
We're bringing everything you love about personal shopping to the world of luxury vehicle shopping. Introducing Genesis Concierge, a fresh approach to finding your perfect luxury car with the help of a personal assistant. Genesis Concierge.
Seems pretty appealing, right? Who wouldn't want to embrace that and make life a little bit easier when it comes to car shopping? All right, trend number 4, whole selves. Remember when we used to talk about how we brought work home with us? In the last 18 months, we have all brought our homes to work. I know my kids have popped up on lots of video calls. My dog's been running around on lots of video calls. There's been construction outside. Like, everything that's happening in our homes is now intermeshed with work. The lines have blurred in the roles we play. And there are many people around the world that are going to continue to manage work and home as we go into 2022. People have this expectation beyond this blurring of lines, because of this blurring of lines, people have this expectation that their specific needs are going to be met. That when they type in a question into a search box, that they are going to get an answer that is specific to them coming back. That the brand is going to understand them as a whole person. That they're not going to be just defined by demographics, that I'm not going to just be a 40-year-old woman, that I'm going to be a mother, that I'm going to be, they're going to know exactly what I want out of them, that I'm going to have all of these other facets that make me a person. And as a result of that, we're seeing some really interesting searches. So people are shopping differently. They're turning to YouTube for virtual test drives or showroom visits. So kind of related a bit to what we saw with Genesis, we're seeing this really fundamental shift in how people are buying cars. New car buyers are more likely to use YouTube in the car buying process than they ever have before. And people are also getting more demanding. So we talked about near me searches. Add now to that. We're seeing that searches for now near me have grown 100%. People are also increasingly searching in their native languages. And I find this one to be really interesting because this is a big shift. So keep in mind, about 60% of the content on the internet is in English. Yet native, keyword native, English speakers only account for about 5%, a little over 5% of the global population. And so we're seeing this really marked shift, particularly in APAC, where you've got 35% of the top searches last year were not in English. And around the world, we're seeing jumps in searches for translate English to name your language growing. So just one example here, requests for translations from Hindi to English are up 90%. So what does that mean for brands? We've got to all remember that people are bringing their whole selves to your brand, and they're not going to expect anything less. They're not just bringing their consumer identities, their demographics. So we've got more and more brands thinking about, how do you speak like a local? Walmart-owned Flipkart recently introduced this multilingual voice assistant for grocery shopping, and we're seeing a ton of innovation in APAC, often out of necessity in this area. So India, I think, is again just a really fascinating example here, where you've got India's Hindi internet user base. They are set to outgrow the country's online English language users. And when you combine Hindi with Marathi and Bengali users, that's going to be 75% of Indians that are online. Now, at the same time, there's this blurring of people's work and home lives that we've talked about, and brands are thinking more holistically, should be thinking more holistically about what they can offer and what they can how they can best serve customers. Panera is a great example of this. Pivoted to grocery delivery, in-restaurant business, pivoted in the pandemic, opened up a grocery delivery business, and it's still going strong even as they're reopening restaurants. And I've got a clip we can hear from the CEO of Panera.
Joining us now is Naren Chowdhury, CEO of Panera Bread. Naren, thank you so much for joining us. I want to start off on this massive growth in delivery. You're taking kind of an unusual approach to delivery. Tell us about your hybrid model.
Yeah, so Panera is actually emerging stronger through the pandemic. As you mentioned, we are more off-premise than before. So from 40% before the pandemic to almost 85% is now off-premise, and more digital, from 35% to nearly 55% of our business is digital. And I think on the off-premise, the biggest driver is delivery. Our delivery business is growing by more than 100%. And as you mentioned, we have a unique, a very versatile delivery model. We have the combination of a fully owned delivery infrastructure with 8,000 of our own delivery drivers on the one hand. And on the other hand, we have partnerships with third-party aggregators and all sort of hybrid models in the middle as well. So it's a very flexible delivery model that is helping us drive this growth that we are seeing.
All right, we've got one more trend. Final trend, number 5, future-proofing, top of mind for all of us. Doesn't matter who you are, businesses, consumers. In the wake of the pandemic, there has been this new, not new, but there's been this wave. People have this interest in kind of figuring out, how do I manage the things I can control? There's been so much that we have not been in control of in this last year. So how do I manage the things that I can control? How do I future-proof my life wherever I can? And people are, no surprise, feeling a bit uneasy as we come out of this pandemic, and they really want reassurance. They want assurances from brands. They want peace of mind wherever possible. So it's not going to surprise anyone that people are going to have a lower appetite for risk for a while. And we're seeing that show up in search. Searches for rentals are up 100%. And 65% of people say that they're reevaluating their lives and their goals in a study that we did. People have also been learning new skills all throughout the pandemic. This has been a really interesting one to see. We've seen a 50% increase in daily views of videos with beginner in the title. And there's been a 70% increase in searches for how to invest. And these are just 2 searches, but there's a whole catalog of searches that are kind of along these lines where people are trying to learn new skills. So as we come out of the pandemic, people are going to be looking to put those new skills to work. So what does all that mean? With these lower appetites for risk, I think there's an even lower tolerance for confusing or any kind of time-consuming communications from brands. Communications from brands should always be simple, but I think it's going to be even more important now in this moment. I found this really entertaining study where they looked at a number of popular apps that have terms and conditions, those things that you never read, that you just click through when you download an app. And the study found that it would actually take hours to fully read these terms and conditions. In fact, one of the data points they had, if you combine the top apps from this study, the combined terms and conditions, longer than a Harry Potter novel. So keep that in mind as you're thinking about your communications to folks in this moment. Now is also a really good time to get creative about how you reduce risk for people. I remember this from the Great Recession. You do too. 2008, 2009, brands were getting really creative. How do we give peace of mind for people who are feeling really skittish? And I think we'll start to see that happen again. Haven't seen any great examples in the US of this yet. If you have them, send them to me. But this example from Malaysia really caught my eye. There's this real estate venture that's introduced a try before you buy program for homes to entice renters. I've got a clip for you.
New year, new hope with EcoWorld Stay to Own. What is Stay to Own? It's simple. You stay to own. This easy homeownership program lets you enjoy living in your dream home first before buying it later. But that's not all. Entry is easy with minimum fuss and low monthly rental. This gives you maximum flexibility and up to 5 years to save up to buy your dream home at the same price as the day you moved in. Yes, the same price. Better yet, part of the rent you pay can be converted to savings to help pay for your dream home. The earlier you convert, the more savings you will enjoy. So what is Stay to Own? It's a fantastic and flexible opportunity and a new hope for you to own your dream home. Specially designed for you by EcoWorld and Maybank House Key.
So that's kind of a fun one, a unique way that this company is looking to kind of put people at ease and help those people that feel risk averse. All right, we have gone through a lot of data today, and I hope packaged together as with these broader trends, with some of these brand examples, some of these quick video clips, it's unlocking some new thinking, some new ideas. It's getting you thinking as you look ahead to 2022, because this quote really sums up what we're all facing right now. There isn't a world where people revert back to their 2019 behaviors, and part of that is just a comfort level. That's a quote from Corey Berry, who's the CEO of Best Buy, from earlier this year. And I think it really rings true for me. We all need to recognize, we all need to prepare for the fact that the pandemic is going to have a lasting impact on consumer behavior. And the people that we're all trying to reach today are fundamentally changed from the people that they were in 2019. I hope looking back for these last 20, 30 minutes or so has helped you all to think about how you'll move forward. And I hope you'll all subscribe to Think with Google to get more content like this, trends, insights delivered to your inboxes. Thanks so much. With that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Awesome. Thanks, Natalie. That was wonderful. I'm now hungry. I want a new car and maybe a vacation coming up. I don't know. If my wife's watching, she'd probably want a vacation. But that was incredible. Appreciate you sharing a lot of those insights. We did get a slew of questions that did come into the chat. I kind of just take them top down if you're okay with that. And I think the first question came in from what pertained to your number 2 topic in terms of higher value, right? What has surprised you the most about consumer change in search and shopping habits, and what have you seen on the Google side there?
Yeah. So I think the thing that I continue to be fascinated by with the change in search is just how specific people are. So, 5 years ago, near me was kind of the big new thing that we were talking about at Google. And now we're seeing, I mentioned it already, but now near me or along my route, the fact that people are going to search, going to that blank box and saying like, I expect that you'll be able to tell me what is near me that I want now, what is along my route. That kind of specificity, I think, really has to make us all stop and think like, wow, people really have this super high expectation of technology today. And if we're not meeting it, then we're missing expectations. Then we're not going to deliver for that customer. So I find that really interesting for search. For shopping, I think just the sheer growth that we've seen. There were some stats that I was looking through from eMarketer actually that were saying, this is the first time e-commerce in China, it's the tipping point. E-commerce in China has exceeded physical commerce for the first time. And we're seeing really rapid growth in markets across Asia, EMEA, and in the US. So this huge boom in e-commerce that we've all been talking about for the last 20 years, like it's here, it's happening. And I find it, the stat that I said earlier about all those e-commerce shoppers that were born during the pandemic, I cannot wait to see how they behave this holiday shopping season. I think it's going to be super interesting.
Absolutely. And I know we're starting to see a lot of those trends on the NetElixir front as well. So appreciate your thoughts there. Transitioning into some of the next ones, one major topic you also did highlight, Natalie, is the one that's also trending throughout our world is the back to office, right? And getting back to the office. So what works, what doesn't work, will it be a hybrid model, anything along those lines? But as businesses start to go back, into your point in terms of along my route or near me, do you think that consumers' behaviors could shift away from online shopping or browsing in terms of when folks start to go back to the office full time or part time?
I mean, I think it's natural to expect that there will be a little dip. You know, I've shopped more in physical stores in the last few months than I did during the same period a year ago because I wasn't leaving my house a year ago. So that we're going to see some of those dips for sure. But I think ultimately people are looking for what's convenient. That's what all of the search trends are telling us, what's convenient. So some of those habits that I formed or things I learned about during the pandemic, I'm not going to let them go. I've got an example actually. Over the weekend, Sunday, I think, I realized like last minute, like, oh, I need like this, you know, I need some cleaning supplies. I need some paper products for Monday. And we had friends that were stopping by in like half an hour. And so I didn't have time to run up to Target, which is like 15 minutes from my house. And so I grabbed my computer, I sat down, put everything in my shopping cart, hit same day delivery. And they do the thing where you can like text with the personal shopper now. And by the time our friends left, all the stuff I needed was on my front step. Like it was just in the bag on my front doorstep, on my porch. And so that kind of thing isn't going to go away. Like if you found a convenient way of doing things, I think that sticks. I really do.
100% agree. If I could tell a story based on what you just shared, I was mowing the lawn the other day and I smacked a pipe and broke it. And Home Depot came to the rescue. I ordered it online, drove over there. They had it in the locker. And I was like, man, I've gotten lazy, or this has just gotten so much easier to me.
It's just a new way. It's just, we're not going to go back. Why would we?
For sure. I know. I didn't have to search the shelves. I knew what I needed. So life is a lot easier. You
know, the other thing I have to mention that I found really interesting, and it's you know, a little bit in the US, but certainly more in developing markets. If I think about like South Africa, definitely parts of Southeast Asia, there were a lot of people that were fundamentally underbanked. So people that when the pandemic hit didn't have online banking. And so e-commerce was not an option for them because they didn't have online banking. And now as a result of the pandemic, you have this big push where a lot of these people have become actually first-time bankers or first-time, you know, they're working with financial institutions to get access to banking so that e-commerce becomes unlocked for them. I think that's another really interesting trend we have to watch in some of those more developing markets.
Awesome. No, that's great. And I'm sure we'll start to see those within countries that start to pop up throughout the world. Perfect. So I'm just looking at some of the other questions that we have. And I think this also flows again with your near me and then the trends that you were mentioning. Aside from what you just mentioned in terms of new financial markets for consumers to buy there, are there any emerging trends that may not be evident right now that might be important over the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years?
The crystal ball question. You know, it's really interesting. The sustainability piece, I think, is really interesting. You know, this idea of a higher purpose, which, like, if you're a little bit cynical or skeptical like me, you kind of roll your eyes a little bit and you're like, ugh. But I really think that is going to become more and more important in the next couple of years, you know, and it's something we've been talking about it for years, right? I was writing stories about like brands trying to be more sustainable 15 years ago in the apparel industry. But I think we're getting to a tipping point. I think we could have this sort of watershed moment in the way, in the way that in 2020 was a watershed moment for racial equity. I think we could have that for sustainability in some way, shape, or form in the next couple of years, where sustainability is just going to become a must-have, a must-do, and consumers are starting to care more and more about it if their search queries are any indication. So I really think brands need to take a close look at that now, because if they wait, they're going to be on their back foot. It's going to feel like lip service when they do start doing it.
Okay. I appreciate that. So if I could take a step backwards in terms of that question as well, you know, what trends are you and the team at Google watching the most closely, aside from the major ones right now and the ones that you guys are foreseeing for the future?
I mean, we're really looking at kind of all of this really, really closely right now to see what's going to stick. We've been running research looking at kind of different scenarios. If you go to thinkwithgoogle.com right now, I believe it's Stellar's top story. We've got this research where we're looking at, okay, in different scenarios, in a scenario where kind of things go back to normal and we have kind of a smooth recovery, how are people going to behave? And in a scenario where there's sort of this bumpier recovery, or we have kind of rolling lockdowns, how are people going to behave? And we did surveys to kind of look at how people thought they would behave across a bunch of different metrics. So we're really, really focused on that piece and trying to understand what exactly what we've been talking about, like what is actually going to stick, what's happening in that crystal ball.
Awesome. And I have one last question that just came in from the chat. It's a mix between a comment and a question, so I'm more or less just going to read it. It's from Adam. He said he loved your analysis. You've done some fantastic co-marketing in this presentation with Panera, Shiseido, and a few others. This sort of marketing support would be life-changing for small businesses. How long before brands prioritize small business as part of their co-marketing strategy?
Well, it's an interesting question. I hadn't thought of it as co-marketing. I just thought it was I just thought they were interesting examples. So certainly, I think good ideas come from everywhere, right? So Panera, big domestic brand. The Malaysia example is a smaller company that's in APAC. So it was less about co-marketing for me and more about just finding some cool examples that I thought might inspire the audience.
For sure. That more or less wraps us up. I didn't know, Natalie, if you wanted to share one last thoughts with everyone that's joining us here. If there's any last minute comments that you have.
No, I hope it was helpful. This is just this is kind of the tip of the iceberg. I only included a couple of search queries for each of the trends, but poured through a bunch of them, and we've got there's lots more on Think with Google. If anybody is interested in checking out more of the search data, we publish on a rolling basis. We publish all of the information that we're finding, and try to package it up and make it interesting and kind of do some analysis for you all as well.
Absolutely. I know me and my team are on there at least weekly. So we appreciate everything that you and the team are putting together for us. So really appreciate you taking the time to join us today. We'll definitely have to keep in touch in terms of what's trending and what's changing in the e-commerce world. But with that, we're going to jump into another break.